Okay, and let me just welcome Kathy Davis again as the traveling RV and veg-inspired woman who's written 3 cookbooks, and I'm sure you're going to tell us about them, please.
Yes.
And really it's fascinating, her lifestyle. So I'm going to turn it over to Kathy. And let me just reiterate first that everybody who registers will get an email from me tomorrow with, we hope if the recording comes through, with the recording and any things that came up, any recipes, Kathy, that you want to share that you're doing, and information about your cookbooks, of course, that will follow up with.
Absolutely. And I put together a PDF with both linked recipes and then the recipes that I'm going to share today, one of which is from one of my cookbooks. So you will get a little sneak peek into that. But thank you, Sally, and for the Plant-Based Pittsburgh team for having me. I'm really excited to be here and share with all of you. Today, I really want to share some easy plant-based meals with you using seasonal ingredients. And my goal here is to equip you to think outside the box a little bit, especially when you might feel like you have an abundance of fresh produce from your local market or your local garden. Now, I love interaction. I love the chat. I do keep an eye on that. So for starters, drop some emojis of veggies you'd like to learn more about, or type in the name, because I know there's no zucchini emoji, that's only a cucumber. But I really want this to be interactive and fun. Feel free to drop questions in the chat. I know that Nikki asked if this is my RV kitchen. Yes, I am going to get into that a little bit. But if I haven't met you, my name is Kathy Davis. I'm a former school teacher turned plant-based lifestyle and mindset coach. And I am the founder of both Veg Inspired and the Eat More Plants Academy. And I am a 3-time cookbook author, which Sally said. And really my mission, I'm on a mission. I figured out how to eat plant-based and still make a lifestyle out of it. So I'm on a mission to help other people achieve the results that I've achieved. And some of those results, if you've been following me or know me from a long time ago or from a couple of years ago, I've lost more than 45 pounds eating this way. I do travel the United States. I do seek out amazing 5-star vegan restaurants, but my day-to-day habits follow a whole food, plant-based way of eating. And with that, not only did I lose weight, but I increased my energy, have a newfound sense of joy and inspiration, both for the plant-based lifestyle, and also I'm able to do the things that we set out to do in this RV life. So my connection to Pittsburgh, I lived in Pittsburgh before we hit the road on the RV. In 2018, my husband and I sold our house in Cranberry Township, bought a 5th wheel RV, and we've traveled all the way from Pittsburgh, all the way up here to southern Vermont, where we're parked right now, all the way to Key West, all the way out to Glacier, Montana. And in the last 3.5 years, we've traveled to 27 states and 19 national parks. And one of my big goals in doing this was to be able to hike and do the outdoor experiences. And 45 pounds ago, that was a challenge. And so I made a decision December 1st, 2019, that I would adopt a whole food plant-based lifestyle. And that was a huge shift from any of the old diet culture that I did. So that's where I am. That's who I am. That's the mission that I'm on, is to help people really make plant-based eating, clean plant-based eating, their way of life. But today I want to share easy recipes, because the biggest key with being able to eat plant-based, especially for us, even though this is a larger RV kitchen, we still don't have every kitchen gadget. We don't always want to bring out the blender. You know, this is a whole sink right here that's covered up right now. So the more cooking that we do, the more we kind of move things around in the RV to make space for that. So I really want to share a lot of easy recipes with you. Now, my goal is to equip you with as many recipes as I can in the hour that we have together. So I can't demo everything, but I do have the recipes linked in the PDF that I will send to Sally so that you can access them and you can cook them on your own. I am going to demo a zucchini recipe because it's fun and I really wanted to share the tofu ricotta. So I'm going to share some easy ideas and really get into, you know, the fresh produce that's right now. Now, where we are right now, we have an organic farm less than a half a mile away. I think it's like 20, like not even like 3/10 of a mile just to get there. And so we've spent a lot of time walking over there, getting some fresh produce. And at our market visit this week, we bought 3 different types of tomatoes. So that's what I'm going to start with. We bought heirloom tomatoes. We bought these beautiful cherry tomatoes in all different shapes, sizes, and colors, and then just regular old slicing tomatoes. And one of the things I want you to think about, especially when you go plant-based, and I don't know if this is true for any of you, but I found that I was always thinking like, oh, I can't eat that. I can't do what I used to do with tomatoes. But what I found is there's always some type of alternative. So the cherry tomatoes, I love to make my own homemade pico de gallo or cucumber tomato salad. The heirloom tomatoes and the slicing tomatoes, I use a lot with tofu mayo, and I'll make a simple sandwich. Some days I'm booked back to back with coaching calls or meetings or recipe demos, and I only have 15 or 30 minutes for a sandwich or for lunch. So I'll use my Ezekiel bread, give it a little quick toast, spread on some tofu mayo, slice up the tomato, and I eat it like that, alongside maybe some potatoes or a garden salad, something really easy like that. And the funny thing is it took me a long time to realize I could do something that simple, right? It's almost like you need to be reminded that it doesn't have to be difficult. The other fun thing we like to do is make fresh tomato sauce. So in the PDF, I have linked for you our oil-free tomato sauce made with fresh tomatoes. Now it's really awesome. You can do it using like a food mill, or blend it in your Vitamix or food processor just to get the tomatoes to kind of simmer down. And then you literally just put everything in a pot and let them kind of cook. And they cook down and they make this beautiful, flavorful, fresh tomato sauce that doesn't take a lot of time. You can do it in under an hour. It uses up the tomatoes, the fresh basil, some garlic, and it just allows you to have this delicious, flavorful meal that you could actually make on a weekday when you have a little bit more time. And so I really wanted to make sure that we gave you some of those easy recipes that can come together really quick or quicker on those busy nights. Now, I don't know about you. I know we've been in like heat waves all across the country. And so all I've wanted lately is fresh foods. So we've relied a lot on our cucumber tomato salad. Now, I feel like that's a pretty common thing. People eat that a lot. That's kind of self-explanatory. Cucumbers, tomatoes, maybe you add onions, scallions, maybe you add chickpeas, things like that. But what we do differently with it is we use an oil-free basil vinaigrette. And that oil-free basil vinaigrette uses the aquafaba from a can of chickpeas as the oil replacer. So if you're like, I really love, an Italian dressing, but I don't use oil anymore, break out the chickpeas, save your aquafaba, and use that aquafaba in place of the oil. So it's a really good, really easy swap out, and allows you to make very delicious dressings in a pinch, and you don't have to get out your blender. Like I said earlier, one of the big things that is, one of the things about living in an RV and traveling full time is I don't always want to have all the kitchen gadgets out. Now I have some of them, but I don't always have them out. And so I've found ways to make easy sauces using ingredients I don't have to blend. So I do a lot of tahini sauces. I'll do a lot of these oil-free vinaigrettes using the aquafaba. And then, yes, and Corey says, you just use the aquafaba and then mix seasonings in it for the dressing. Yeah, so the oil-free basil vinaigrette is oil and vinegar, or that's oil, aquafaba and vinegar, and then spices. And then that one uses a chiffonade basil, so fresh basil. And then we also have a Greek one that follows a very similar premise, but uses more of the Greek spices. So you can really kind of get creative. Now, I don't use a lot of the seasoning mixes anymore from the store, but that would be an easy way to whip up your favorite Italian dressing and ditch the oil. There's a lot of companies on the market now that make some salt-free or low, cleaner ingredient dressing mixes, but they all still use oil. So this gives you an oil alternative. So we've linked the oil-free tomato sauce recipe. We've linked the oil-free basil vinaigrette. I've linked some of my favorite sauces. Some of them do use cashews. So if you are, not using a lot of cashews, maybe don't start with those. But at the bottom of that favorite sauces is the tofu mayo from the China Study Cookbook that was reprinted with permission. And I always say that because people are like, "Oh, you copied it." No, I reprinted it with permission because it is our go-to nut-free mayo. Now, I get a lot of questions about whether you could make it soy-free. And I'm finding now that there are several soy-free tofus on the market. I have not found one yet, but I know that they're out there. I saw a picture of a chickpea one. I've heard of the pumpkin seed one. So start to get aware, is there a tofu free or soy free tofu in your market that you can get? And if you don't want it to be soy, maybe it's a chickpea tofu mayo. And that sounds like hummus to me, but it's not really made the same. But that's a really great place to start with how to use up some of these tomatoes in simple meals. Now, moving into other things that you could use tomatoes for. A lot of times I feel like we get kind of stuck. Like, what if I hollowed it out and stuffed my chickpea salad in it? Oh, that's an interesting way, because you might eat the tomatoes sliced on a chickpea salad sandwich, but if you don't want bread, could you just eat it with the tomatoes? So start thinking about things that you might be able to do with these, bountiful harvests that you're having, or farmers market pickups and grocery hauls with some of these more prevalent, more abundant seasonal vegetables. Which brings me to zucchini. So zucchini seems to be the one vegetable that everybody's always like, "Oh my goodness, I have too much zucchini. What am I going to do with it?" And so I personally love to grill it. We grill out a lot, living the RV life where we like to be outside. So we do a lot of grilling. We'll grill it and pair it with fresh ingredients. So in the PDF that you'll get as well is my zucchini topped with hummus and tabbouleh salad. So tabbouleh is a fresh parsley salad. It can easily be made with leftover quinoa, or bulgur is what it typically is made with. In the recipe we use super grains, which was a blend that Whole Foods used to make. And the reason I really like the grilled zucchini with the fresh ingredients on top is, one, you can grill the zucchini today in the moment and then eat it, or you can grill it all on Sunday and have it in your fridge and then just add the fresh ingredients throughout the week. So it allows you to have some batch ingredient prepping happening, and you're not relying on having to cook a new meal every single night, and with the hummus and the tabbouleh, both of those could be made ahead of time as well. So it really frees you up in those in the moment decisions to just head to the fridge, grab a couple of zucchinis, dollop of hummus, some fresh tabbouleh, and you've got a fairly hearty meal. You may want to pair that with an additional starch, just kind of leaning into how full you are, or really being intuitive to how full your body is. I also love to just slice the zucchini in half. So sometimes I'll grill it in planks, and other times I'll grill it just sliced in half, or I'll cut it into maybe moons or half moons and grill it and use it in fajitas or tacos. So an easy way to kind of flavor up vegetables, or vegetables mostly, but it could be, you could do soy curls, you could do tofu, you could do tempeh, you could do jackfruit, is to get everything kind of in the pan or on the grill, get it cooked up. So saute it without your oil if you don't use oil. And then right before serving, toss it with a combination of liquid aminos or soy sauce or coconut aminos, one of those amino savory umami ingredients, lime juice, and then taco seasoning or chili seasoning, something along that line to give you that taco-y flavor that works for fajitas, tacos, allows you to just really lean into a big, nice, full veggie taco. And zucchini works wonderfully in that. It has a great texture when it's been cooked. So it really kind of gives it that like heartier, meatier texture in your tacos or fajitas. So it's another really good way to use the fajitas and or to use the zucchini in fajitas or tacos, and then an easy way to kind of whip up those taco spices. You don't have to necessarily simmer it in the amino, the lime, and the seasonings. You can just toss it in the end while it's still warm. Another thing that I love, and a lot of people are like, I don't do soups in the summer. And when it's 90 degrees, I wasn't really wanting soups either. But a late summer soup, we have a minestrone soup in the 30-minute whole food plant-based cookbook, which is my first cookbook. It actually uses summer vegetables. So it uses the zucchini, the summer squash, the fresh basil to really pull in those flavors because it cooks in under 30 minutes. So that's another really, really good way to use up some of these bountiful harvests, is to use them in soups or use them in stews, something along those lines. So I saw some comments and questions in the chat, so keep them coming. Like I said, I love to be interactive. Nikki said carrots and cauliflower are ingredients that she loves and wants to learn more about. So one of my favorite recipes, which I could have shared with you all tonight, but I'm not, and I'm kind of regretting it, are carrot dogs. Has anybody tried carrot dogs? So I was super skeptical of carrot dogs. I thought that they were crazy. Like, how could a carrot actually taste like a hot dog? And I was blown away. And we've done it a couple of ways. On our website, we have a recipe where you steam the carrots and then marinate them for 8 or more hours is ideal. In the budget-friendly cookbook, which is the third cookbook, we actually simmer them in the spice blend and we reduce the spices. So it basically simmers the spice marinade right onto the carrot dog. It's a low and slow process, so it's not a 30-minute recipe. It's more like a 60 or more, because you really want to do it very low and slow so that the carrots can soften and cook, but the marinade can also cook down. But it takes that overnight marinade out. So if you're, oh, I'm going to go to a picnic this afternoon, I need a quick dish, not a quick dish, but I need a dish for later today, you could cook down your carrots while you're getting ready for the picnic. So if you haven't tried carrot dogs, I highly recommend it. They really are fun, and they're just it's just such a unique way of eating carrots. And also you can make so many varieties of toppings. You can do, sauerkraut and mustard. You can do like Chicago dog style with the pickles and the onions and tomatoes, just really kind of leaning into the different toppings that you can use with carrot dogs. So that's that. Yes, Barb says, I love carrot dogs. Nikki says, no, but I want to. Definitely do it. Definitely do it. They're so fun. And the other cool thing that we found is you can prep them for a camping weekend and actually heat them up over the fire. So we actually have a grill grate that goes over the campfire. And so we'll just set the carrot dogs on there to kind of warm up, and then you can just grab them off with tongs and eat them just like you would a hot dog. So if we have people camping with us, we'll prep some veggie burgers, and then everything can be cooked, outside in the moment when everybody's trying them. So that's really fun, and adds a different flair, and people are just blown away that they resemble enough of a hot dog that you get that. So, and then cauliflower, gosh, there's so many things that you can do with cauliflower. I love to just roast it and eat it just plain roasted with a little salt and pepper. I also like to toss it in buffalo sauce. I grew up in Western New York, so I'm kind of a fan of buffalo sauce. That was one of my hangups when I first was introduced to veganism, as I was not really excited about it, as I didn't want to give up all the foods that I loved. And now I've come a long way in those 8 years. But I love buffalo cauliflower. I do it really simply, mostly because I don't have time to be breading and battering. I literally will roast them in the oven until they're soft-ish, and then bring them out, toss them in a buffalo sauce. If you don't love Frank's right out of the jar, right out of the glass jar, you can mix it with a little bit of either the tofu mayo, tahini, Or you can make like a tofu mayo ranch, and you can actually cool down the buffalo sauce using that, because typical buffalo sauce uses butter. And so since I'm oil free, I don't use even a vegan butter. So therefore it allows you to kind of use some of those creamier ingredients to lower that heat. So there's a couple of carrots and cauliflower ideas. If you have other vegetables that you want me to kind of on the fly tell you what I do with them, feel free to drop it in the chat. While you're doing that, I can also answer questions, but I do want to get into tonight's recipe demo. It's a really simple and easy recipe using zucchinis, tomatoes, and fresh basil, because those were all bountiful at the farmer's market, and we really wanted to kind of highlight some of these recipes. So I'm going to make the tofu ricotta first, and then we'll get into the zucchini salad. So the tofu ricotta is really easy. It's a half a block of tofu, so 7 ounces of tofu. This will be linked. This will be just a description of the PDF for you, so you'll be able to have this recipe. But if you want it right now, you can write it down. So it's 7 ounces of the tofu, and I just have it in a bowl, and I use the fork to kind of crumble it up a little before I put the other ingredients in. Next, I'm going to add 1.5 tablespoons of hemp hearts, 1 tablespoon of nutritional yeast, and 1/8 teaspoon of garlic. Now, what I've done here is I've given you the ratio of our hemp heart Parmesan, which is also in the 30-minute whole food plant-based cookbook. So one of the things that we love is we love pastas, we love Italian dishes, and we love Parmesan. But we like it to have that nutty kind of richer flavor. And nuts require the blender or the food processor, which then has to be washed in an RV kitchen. So we sat and thought, what could we use that's hearty and has a neutral kind of flavor, but will really add some texture to it? Enter the hemp heart. So hemp hearts or hulled hemp seeds. So it's the center part of the hemp heart. That's what we make our hemp heart Parmesan out of. So it's hemp hearts, nutritional yeast, and garlic. So for this recipe, I've pulled that out of the cookbook and then just put it into the tofu ricotta recipe. So we're going to add the dry ingredients to the tofu. Then I'm going to add a tablespoon, 1 to 2 teaspoons of lemon juice. Now this really depends on your texture. 1 teaspoon gives it a kind of drier texture, and then 2 teaspoons gives it a wetter texture. It also depends. This is firm tofu, but if you have any experience cooking with tofu, you know that one brand's firm tofu is not the same as the other. So I'm going to put in a little bit heartier of a teaspoon, and then I'll adjust it as necessary. Sorry, I know that's loud. And then I'm just going to mash the ingredients together. This is when I wish I had multiple camera angles so you could really see. Now, the 30-minute whole food plant-based cookbook is a salt-free and oil-free cookbook. So I won't add salt to that recipe, but my philosophy is if a little bit of salt at the table gets you to eat your vegetables, do the little bit of salt. I pretty much follow the Dr. McDougall approach with that. So that I may look at that and say, okay, that may need a little salt and pepper to taste later, but right now I'm going to let that sit while we mix up the zucchini basil salad. So with the zucchini basil salad, you're going to take about 2 small, maybe 3 small zucchinis and cut them into pretty thin slices. And then to that, we're going to add 1.5 cups of cherry tomatoes. So I'm also going to get into the chat. So I'm going to cut and answer this. Ronnie, it was firm tofu that I had drained. Now I'm just going to cut these tomatoes. And then Corey, so for that recipe, yes, I used garlic powder. I have used fresh garlic, but I find that sometimes it's too bitey for everybody that's eating it, usually me, when it's raw. So I've opted to use the garlic powder. And for those of you that need a fun fact, about 1/8 teaspoon of garlic powder is the equivalent to 1 raw garlic clove. So I'm just quartering these cherry tomatoes or cutting them to be about the same size because some of them are a little bit different in size. Like this one's ginormous. Other questions? I did not press the tofu. I just drained it before we got on the call and then put it in the bowl. Now the other half of the tofu, because that might be what you're sitting here thinking, like, what's she gonna do with the other half of the block of tofu? I would either mix that into the tofu mayo recipe or make a tofu mayo, or I will slice it into slabs and bake it. Baked tofu with a little salt and pepper or a little pepper and liquid aminos is one of my favorite snacks. Or I use it on sandwiches, like a baked, kind of reminds me of fried egg. That recipe is also in the 30-minute whole food plant-based cookbook. Referencing that a lot today. Oops, just a couple more. So this is about 1.5 cups of tomatoes. Oh, Corey, thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate you for being here. Do connect with me on Instagram or Facebook if you guys have any other questions. Let's see. Barb left too. How thin do I slice the tofu to bake it? That one's kind of soft. I'm not going to use him. I cut my tofu into 8 slabs. In half and half. Yeah, 8 slabs. So I'll take a block of tofu and cut it in half, cut the 2 halves in half, and then cut those into 8 slices. And then we bake it. If it's firm tofu, it could be up to 45 minutes. If it's the extra firm pressed tofu, it can be less than 30. So it really depends on the type of tofu and the texture that you're going for. Corey, I am veg inspired on social media. Yes. Okay, so we've got our tomatoes. The next thing is we're going to do a cup of basil, fresh basil, that I'm going to cut into a chiffonade, which I'm probably not going to do it exactly, but a chiffonade is where you roll it up. And then cut it into little strips. So like I said, this is about 1 cup. You know, if you love basil, you can use more. If you don't love basil, you can use less. You could do this. I mean, honestly, you could do this with other herbs. If you're a cilantro fan, you could make this more of a like Mexican inspired and do cilantro and lime juice. But this is more of a pesto Italian kind of inspired. So then to this, we're also going to add 1/4 cup of sunflower seeds. And then we're going to add some more nutritional yeast. This is going to really tie in that like pesto Italian flavor. In my mind, it was like a deconstructed pesto into a salad. So this is about 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast and 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder. Now, again, you could use fresh garlic. The garlic that we bought at the farmer's market last week was really, really potent. And so I opted for garlic powder when I was testing this recipe. And then you could add more or less nutritional yeast. I'm going to do 2 tablespoons because there is nutritional yeast in the tofu. But if you love nutritional yeast and want it to have that more of that cheesy, hearty, rich flavor, you could add more nutritional yeast. And I probably needed a bigger bowl, but I don't have a bigger glass bowl. And then last, we're going to add about 1/4 cup of lemon juice, which really juicy lemons can be about 2 tablespoons, about 1 tablespoon per half. So that might be 2 lemons because 1/4 cup is 4 tablespoons. Let me grab a spatula. And then we're just going to stir all these ingredients together. Said I probably should have gotten a bigger bowl. I am always queen of not using the big enough bowl. Anybody else? Well, we got a watermelon from the farmer's market, so my super big bowl is in the refrigerator with that. But you also can't see through it. So I like to pick the glass bowl so you can see how pretty the colors are. And then the last thing I would do is I would probably salt and pepper this to taste when I went to serve it. So the salt is going to bring the water out of the zucchini. So I would opt not to salt it until I was getting ready to serve it so that it didn't get all watery. if I was going to use some salt. Trying to get a nice picture. So that's what we have. Yummy and delicious. And then to serve that, I would put about a scoop of this, probably a half a cup of the zucchini tomato pesto, and then a nice serving of the ricotta. So let me grab a bowl. Well, I would have, if I was presenting it, I would have presented it a little bit nicer, but it gets like a nice kind of yummy mixture. And then we have to taste it, right? That's how it works. Get a fresh fork. All these fresh ingredients, the basil, the ricotta. I highly recommend it. So that's when I think about easy recipes, I think about things that can come together less than 20 minutes that really are colorful and flavorful. And that's what we were really going with, or that's what I was really going with this specific recipe. How could I bring more color to your meals? How could I really leverage the power of these fresh vegetables? Now, when I eat this, I will eat it with a starch, which is really one of the last tips that I want to leave you with. And then I definitely want to open it up for questions. So if making plant-based meals feels overwhelming, if you're in that situation where you're trying new recipes every night, you're feeling overwhelmed, you're getting frustrated, you're not sure what to do, right? Maybe you're new to this, maybe you just have food fatigue and you're bored of the things that you're doing. Take a step back, simplify things for a week. Maybe give yourself a week off of cooking and cook a couple of large batches of a starch, rice, whole grains, potatoes, and then pair those with some of these simpler salad, fresh meals. It's a really, really easy thing to do in the summer. So actually, back here, I have an entire bag of red potatoes that I boiled for dinner. And those red potatoes will be the starch alongside of my meals throughout the week. So a lot of times for lunch, I'll eat what I call starch and salad. And I really think about what that looks like for my schedule, what that looks like for my preparation. So like I said before, a lot of times I'm booked back to back with calls. I do take a lunch break every day, but I like to spend that outside walking, getting, doing something that really kind of, gives me an energy boost, which eating gives me an energy boost, but being outside really gives me an energy boost. So I don't want to spend a whole hour of my lunch in here prepping ingredients. So a lot of times I'll eat starch and salad, and my clients know this about me. I will literally eat a potato, 2 potatoes, 3 potatoes, and a huge garden salad. My rule of thumb is some type of starch, grains, oats, brown rice, whole grain pasta, sweet potato, white potato, whatever starch you love. And then I like to pair it with some greens. So one week that might be spinach. The next week it might be leafy lettuce. The next week it might be steamed kale, which here's a bonus recipe. I do not have this on the PDF, but to steam our kale, we are super simple. We stem it, or we buy the kale in the bag that's already been stemmed and chopped. If it's not, we just rip it apart, put it in a pan. We use cast iron, put in a couple of tablespoons of water, turn it on medium low, cover it. And then when you start to see the steam, then you know it's steaming. And then it's about 3 to 5 minutes, depending on the texture you like. And what I love is it gets this bright green color, and it just brightens up any dish, any plate. And then you can season that again with aminos or a miso water mixture if you don't use salt, or you can salt and pepper it, or you can splash it with your favorite vinegar. or your favorite salt-free blend. And what I love is we eat that a lot. I joke, it's one of our favorite meals is to eat brown rice, cooked pinto beans that we cook up with some spices, and then the kale. And it's this, you almost think I'm eating beans, rice, and kale. Like I'm the epitome of what we think vegans eat. But it's so flavorful and so fresh and so delicious and so easy. The rice can cook in the Instant Pot. The beans can cook in a crock pot or on the stovetop. We do that a lot where we'll have the rice in the Instant Pot, the beans on the stovetop, and then we pull the kale off and it steams, pull the beans off and steam the kale real quick. And we have an easy meal. Like all those things can be happening simultaneously. So like I said, my rule of thumb is I stopped at greens, a starch, a bean, a green, and then some types of veggies. And one of the questions I always ask is, how can you add more color to what you're eating? If you look at your plate and you're like, wow, this is beige, or this is all red, or this is all, green, how can I add more color to that? Is it adding tomatoes? Is it adding beets? Is it adding shredded carrot? And, I wrote the budget friendly cookbook because I really wanted to tackle that myth of price, but there are some caveats to that. We pay with either our time or our money. So shredded carrots, you can buy shredded carrots in the grocery store, or you can buy whole carrots and shred them yourself. It just depends on your time and your money. And so that's one of the things I always tell people, like with the budget friendly cookbook, it has loads of ideas, but when you're thinking about how to add more color, which way are you going to turn? Are you going to buy the prepped vegetables, the beets already cooked, the cabbage already shredded, the carrots already shredded, or are you got to buy everything in whole and come home and prep it? And that's really where you kind of start making those decisions on as far as adding color and how to deal with a lot of those produce questions that we get a lot is, how do I make this more budget friendly, but also fit my time? And so when you're looking at that, you can ask yourself, what are easy things that I can buy that are ready, or I can buy that I can eat just as it is? So grape tomatoes, cherry tomatoes, they don't even need, you just wash them and eat them. Like you don't even have to cut them. And then the last thing that usually goes in my bowl is some type of sauce. Some type of rule of thumb is the starch, the bean, the green, the veggie, and some type of sauce, whether it's maple mustard, the tahini bowl sauce, one of the vinaigrettes made with aquafaba, or like this where it's made with lemon and nooch and basil, and it really has a lot of flavor, but I just put lemon juice in there. There was I didn't add any other liquid. And so you can really start to use those types of flavors, citrus, vinegars, to add in some of the brightness to your dishes. Other questions in the chat. And let's see, is that all that? Awesome. How many servings would you say is in that batch of ricotta? I think it says 4 to 6. A half a block of tofu. See, that's the thing. Like, what is the half a block of tofu? I think says that they're like, I don't have the package anymore, 3 servings or 4 servings. That it makes about, it says my internet connection is unstable. Can you all hear me? Okay. It says it makes about, this is about 2.5 cups of ricotta. So if you're going to put 1/4 of a cup, it could serve, more than 8 people. But if you're going to use, a half a cup on your half a cup to get more of the protein, right? The bean. Ronnie says 5 servings in a pack of tofu. So that would be technically 2.5 servings if you followed the tofu rule. But you could probably serve that to 4 over a salad like this. 4 or 5 people. Just depends. It depends on where you want, how you want to use it. So this is my first cookbook, the 30-minute whole food plant-based cookbook. This is the cookbook that has the tofu ricotta and some of the other recipes I mentioned. This is available on Amazon, or there's a link on my website for them. I also have the super easy plant-based cookbook, which is fun because it's divided into 4 categories One is a no cook recipes. So this would fall into the no cook recipes. One is more 30-minute recipes. Another one is one pot recipes. And that's where all my sheet pan recipe meals are. I know it's August, 90 degrees. We're not really thinking about sheet pan meals, but come fall, come winter, you might really like the sheet pan meals. And then the last one are 5 ingredient recipes. And those are fun because they, again, small, short recipes that happen really easily. And then, as I mentioned, the budget-friendly plant-based cookbook. That one is similar layout to the 30-minute with your breakfast, your handhelds, your salads, your entrees, your desserts. And I do include spice blends. I have ketchup and homemade ketchups and barbecue sauces, a lot of salad dressings. One of the tips that I tell all my clients when I'm working with them is go through the cookbooks and read the dressing recipes for the salads. Because a lot of times in my example as well, they're not separated and not listed as a separate salad dressing, but they can be used in other salads. Like there's a smoky salad dressing in the first cookbook that uses, gosh, I said soy sauce a lot today, but it uses soy sauce, maple syrup, and smoked paprika and some other ingredients. And it's modeled after like a hot bacon dressing from a steakhouse. And we pair it with a spinach salad with strawberries and onions, and really kind of brings out the flavor of the smokiness. It's just fun to have that kind of a dressing. You could use that on grilled eggplant or grilled zucchini, just thinking about other ways that you can use the dressings that are in these cookbooks. And if, again, I invite you to ask your questions in the chat. I will definitely go through and answer those if you do have other questions. And then I guess I'm a meal planning pro. So one other tip, as long as we're talking about cookbooks, is when you meal plan, when you peruse cookbooks. One of the things that I find a lot of times happens is people will say, I'm going to sit down to do my meal plan. And 6 hours later, they're still looking through the first cookbook because they started at the front. And as a cookbook author, like, I want you to read the whole cookbook. Like, I spent a lot of time on that. But if you're meal planning, I want you to say, I need a salad recipe, and flip right to the salad recipes and pick a salad. If you are looking for a potato recipe, I want you to go to the back and find a potato recipe and meal plan with intention, so you don't get caught up in it taking a really long time. So that was kind of a bonus tip, because I was talking about the cookbooks. Let's see. How can we get one of your shirts? They are cute. Darla, connect with me on social media. I have a limited amount in the RV with me. And so I only have a limited amount in sizes left. I haven't run another print of them. But connect with me and we can see if I have one that will fit. And then, would frozen cauliflower work to make buffalo wings? So here's another pro tip. We roast frozen vegetables all the time. We preheat our convection oven to like 350, 400, line a baking sheet with parchment paper or a Silpat mat, dump the frozen vegetables on there, spread them out, and roast them for like 25 minutes, and just keep an eye on them. Because a lot of times, especially in the convection oven, that'll dry them out, since they're wet from the freezer. So it can work in an air fryer, it can work in a convection oven. Because I don't have another oven, I only know the convection oven setting. But like I said, we bring it up to about, so in a regular oven, if we do 350 to 400, it would be your 25 degrees higher than me. So you might even bring it up to 400 degrees Fahrenheit to roast frozen vegetables. So yes, you could totally cook the frozen cauliflower and turn it into a buffalo wing. And then, I love your kitchen and my dream is to live in an RV. Would you mind showing us the inside of your fridge? Oh boy, I can try. I can't move. My iMac is the computer that's filming me, and I can't move it. It's its own setup over there, but I can open the fridge. So it's not as deep as a standard refrigerator. I don't know if the doors will stay open. It's not as deep as a standard refrigerator, but it has 2 crisper drawers on the bottom, and then 4 3 regular size shelves and then a small one on top. It's bigger than I expected it to be. Now, again, this model of an RV is designed as a grand kitchen. This specifically is an RV refrigerator, so it runs on both electric and propane. I am working to get us a residential fridge. We just have to get, it has to fit perfectly in that hole. And so we haven't decided on which one we want, but this does not, a residential fridge would be better. We could keep plant-based ice cream. We can't freeze bananas because the freezer doesn't, they don't freeze fast enough, if that makes sense. So like the banana gets brown and mushy before it freezes solid. So there's little sacrifices that you make to live this life on the road, I suppose. Other questions, comments, things you need clarity on, vegetables you want me to kind of on the fly talk about?
You're a
And you're
wealth of
welcome,
knowledge.
Nikki.
Wealth
ahead.
of knowledge.
Thank
I just
you.
have to say, you're a wealth of knowledge. Yes, I'm keeping an eye on the chat also to see if there's anything else that people have.
It's hard to plan these times in an hour because you don't know if people are going to have more questions or less questions.
Yeah, right.
And your
some
questions
people
can be
had to
about
leave,
anything.
But I said, yeah. Someone wants to know, do you use the Instapot a lot?
So I wish I could say I did, but we actually use it for rice, beans, but we mostly use our induction cooktop and our Dutch oven. It's just been, I haven't found the knack for the Instant Pot. And I'm not a huge fan of, like, I like soup, but I'm not a huge fan of soup. So we tend to do a quick 30-minute soup that we do on the induction cooktop in the Dutch oven or in the other saucepan, and that's what we ended up using it for. But we used to have a rice cooker, and our rice cooker kind of fritzed out. And so it was, do we want to get another rice cooker? Or do we want to try the Instant Pot? And so we also use it for steel cut oats. So the Instant Pot won, but we haven't ventured outside of cooking rice and beans and oats. Mushrooms. Good question, Rebecca. So I love mushrooms, and we will often buy the large containers of mushrooms and cook them all. We have a Blackstone grill. It's one of those cast iron griddles. And so we will cook the whole 2 big packages of mushrooms on one day because mushrooms are so fragile. They go bad so fast. And so we found that if we cook them and then divide them into containers, we can do fried rice, add cooked mushrooms, fajitas, add the cooked mushrooms at the end when we mix in the aminos and the lime juice, soup, throw them in a soup at the end. So it allows us to kind of stretch out the time of the mushrooms. And I would say that we keep the mushrooms in the fridge about 3 to 5 days after we've cooked them. They don't usually last that long because, you buy these 2 containers and when they cook, they shrink down. They're kind of like spinach, but that allows us to stretch out the time. Now, if from a storage perspective, if you do buy mushrooms, you can transfer them from the plastic container into paper sandwich bag, paper Whole Foods bag, wherever you get a paper bag, and it will help the paper will not, it helps the mushrooms stay fresh a little bit longer. It might stretch it out a couple of days because the plastic on the mushroom makes it all slimy and gross. But I will say we normally buy like portobellos or baby bellas or cremini. Those are the ones we typically use, but we did at a farmer's market in town, we found a mushroom forager or mushroom grower, and we bought blue oyster mushrooms. And I wish that I had one because they were so cool. We shred them apart and then we just cook them in our cast iron skillet in a little bit of, we don't even need water with mushrooms. You just kind of let them cook and they release their own liquids. And then we added aminos to them and then ate them as the filling of a pita with a cucumber, tomato, lemon kind of salad, like an Israeli style salad, and pickled cabbage and hummus. So that was a really fun way to use those. The gentleman that sold them to us said you can use them in pastas, you can use them in he said fajitas, he said tacos, he said there's a lot of other ways you can use them. And then there's Wicked Kitchen, but he uses oil and he like presses the mushrooms between 2 cast iron skillets and they look awesome. What else was I going to say about that? I had a thought. I get so excited that I get off on a tangent. That's where I am with mushrooms. Brussels sprouts. So Brussels sprouts, I personally like Brussels sprouts roasted on a sheet pan with a sweeter vegetable. So sweet potatoes that are cubed, butternut squash that's cubed. I also like to shred them and mix them with like a maple mustard. So again, that bitter Brussels sprout pairing with that sweeter kind of sweeter ingredient. You might even be able to use date syrup or something along those lines, a sweeter balsamic to pull in some of that flavor. I don't have a lot of experience with Brussels sprouts because when I get them, those are the ways that I end up using them, as roasted with a sweet vegetable or shredded into like a Brussels like sprout salad or coleslaw. Since you don't have as much space, do you shop every day? So interestingly enough, no. Because I'm an avid meal planner, we usually only shop once a week. Now, as I was telling my clients on my call last night, because we were talking about meal planning, the last 2 months, actually more than 2 months, we have had access to organic farm markets several days a week. So that really skewed my normal meal planning. Normally I sit down on a Wednesday or Thursday and we grocery shop for the week and we're very intentional. And with these farm markets, we would go and we would buy these ingredients, and then I would come home and have to figure out how to use them. Like we bought radicchio. I'd never cooked with radicchio. It's a very bitter green. And so I just looked it up and it says it goes really well with a sweeter dressing, balsamic or maple or honey, they said, which I don't use honey, and goes really well grilled. So we actually grilled it and then drizzled a maple mustard over top of it. So, for me, I'm an avid meal planner. I also do keep rice and beans on hand because sometimes we're in really remote locations that don't have, you can always get beans and rice, but sometimes you have to get white rice and canned beans because they don't have the black beans that you want. Or chickpeas were on a shortage for a while and I was like, I can't run out of chickpeas. I make my own hummus. So we tend to keep a stash of some of those commonly used ingredients for us. And a question that I get a lot is like, what does your grocery list look like? Because I've been meal planning for over 5 years, I'm pretty well versed in what needs to go on the grocery list every week. We always have lettuce. We always have salad greens, something of that nature. I always have tomatoes. When tomatoes aren't in season, we buy the grape tomatoes in the pints because they're grown in hot houses, so they're pretty consistent with their flavor all year round. We always have brown rice. We always have boiling potatoes. We always have other grains. We always have vinegars, tahini, soy sauce. I've mentioned that several times. I always try to keep a couple packages of tofu, a couple packages of tempeh. And then, really kind of just keeping those foods that you always eat in the house, but also being willing to expand outside of those. As in, like, I love rice and beans and I love my starch and salad. Can I try a new dressing? Can I, can I add variety that way? That's a question to ask yourself, because I talked a little bit about food fatigue and variety a little bit in the beginning, but it's very common to find easy recipes and stay with them and not add variety. And, using zucchini raw is not something that a lot of people do unless they spiralize it. And so I don't have a spiralizer, so this could work with a spiralizer. You can buy spiralized zucchini, but you can also just thinly slice it. And I just sliced it with the knife. So you could use a mandolin, that would be much easier. But again, I have a lot of kitchen gadgets, but I don't have that. So I think I answered that. I think I went on a tangent a little bit, Nikki, but I hope that kind of gave you the idea. And as I said, there is a huge pantry. It's like as tall as the refrigerator, and it's probably, I don't know, 8 to 12 inches deep. So it holds three cans deep. It's like 3 cans deep. So, I have cans of cans of beans, salsas, things like that. Like I would say that I could eat for a couple of weeks if I needed to. And then during this season, we supplement with farmers market. So we might do a pickup grocery order for the beans and rice and potatoes if we can't get the potatoes at the farmers market, and then supplement with the fresh vegetables, the tomatoes, the zucchini, the squashes and things like that. And like as fall comes, we'll rotate into more of the seasonal fall recipes. I might have missed the maple mustard. The maple mustard is in, I always have to look because I get confused. The maple mustard is in this cookbook, the super easy plant-based, and it actually pairs with a broccoli. It has its own page, but it pairs with a broccoli chickpea salad. So it really, the maple and the mustard with the broccoli really kind of add this nice balance of flavors. So that's typically, we use the maple mustard a lot, but it works really well with that broccoli combination. Do you happen to make a jalapeno hummus? Love the 365 Whole Foods brand, but it has oil in it. So fun fact, I don't love spicy foods. So we've not tried a jalapeno hummus. My question would be, when you look at the ingredients, does it list if it's fresh or roasted jalapeno? If it's fresh jalapeno, you likely could just throw it in like you would a red pepper, and then just like a roasted red pepper, and then just adjust the lemon lime. That's when I recipe develop. If I'm trying to make, we tried a hummus. There is a hummus in hummus in Pittsburgh, Osmar's Foods, that's oil free. And we tried their scallion parsley hummus, and it was amazing. And so we came home and we were like, how do we make this? And it uses dried scallions and dried parsley. And I was like, we could try it with fresh, but then you have to adjust the different other ingredients, because the fresh is going to add a little liquid. And so you just kind of play with it. So I don't have that, Nan, unfortunately. Trying to think of how else you could test that. You could almost puree the jalapeno first before you put the chickpeas in, and then add the chickpeas so that you don't get like chunks of jalapeno, unless you like chunks of jalapeno. So that's where I am with that. But maybe I need to add a jalapeno hummus to the list of things to try. I'm sure my husband would like that. He loves the spicy stuff.
I love horseradish hummus, Kathy, but
ooh, that sounds good.
I'm going to I have to say, for all of us, this was so inspiring. You are an inspired vegan, okay? Your enthusiasm really is contagious. So thank you for your generosity with your knowledge and your tips. It was wonderful.
Awesome.
It
Well,
really
I
was.
appreciate it. And thank you for those kind words. And honestly, you guys, if you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me on Facebook. I'm Kathy Allen Davis, or on Instagram at Veg Inspired. I'd love to hear your stories. I'd love to be a resource on your journey. I really pride myself in making this easy and empowering people to leverage the power of whole plant foods. So I'm glad you found it amazing. I really appreciate all of you tuning in, and thanks again to Plant-Based Pittsburgh for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's been a thrill. Thank you, Kathy.
Awesome.
Good night,
Bye, everybody.
everyone.
Have a great night.
Or yes.